Welcome to the Love Deep Lab podcast, helping you integrate sex, sexiness, sacredness, and science in your life and your bedroom. And now, your host, Dr. Stormy.
Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Stormy. Thanks so much for being here today. Today, we are going to talk about something that's really important and really a passion of mine, is how to fight fair. So if you are in a relationship, conflict is a good thing. And it gets a bum rap because we don't fight fair. But this is a skill and a practice. And these are strategies, 8 simple strategies to help you practice the skill of fighting consciously and fighting in a way that strengthens your relationship rather than disrupting the connection or harming the connection. And the research is really sound and solid that conflict in a partnership is a good thing. It deepens the relationship, it deepens the intimacy, the understanding. You can move closer together if you fight well, fight fair, fight consciously, rather than moving further apart and building resentments over time and all the things that can happen in partnerships. And so learning to fight fair is a really important skill, but knowing and also welcoming conflict in, because you get to see your partner's intimate sensitivities. You get to see where their wounds are, where their triggers are, and that is sacred space. That is intimacy. That is truly knowing someone, and then doing your best to avoid those sensitive spots, those past woundings. But you are going to trigger your partner. You are going to be in conflict with your partner, and the more you move into deep partnership, the more conflict you will have. So learning to fight fair is an important skill. So the first tip, it's just an easy one. Easier said than done sometimes, but be kind. You can be really angry at your partner. And I work with my couples and also in my own personal journey and in my own relationship on welcoming in anger. It is just another emotion, but learning to be kind to each other in conflict is really important. So that means no name calling, no degrading each other, and doing the best that you can with that. Also, no interruptions, because when you interrupt your partner, you are responding. You're interrupting them to respond rather than to understand. So trying not to interrupt your partner, apologizing if you do, and just really listening to your partner, being kind to your partner. How would you want to be treated in conflict? How will you tolerate being treated in conflict? And really focusing on being kind and not interrupting is the first tip. The second tip, stay present in the conflict, right? So don't be on your phone, don't be in distractions, don't turn your back, like physically, energetically, or emotionally, right? Staying present and understanding that it is you, the two of you versus the problem, not the two of you versus each other. I love that tip. And it's a really important one. So if you can think of it, the two of you as kind of versus this problem, this tension, this triggering, whatever's happening in the space, rather than the two of you against each other, can be really aligning. And really staying with part of staying present, staying only with this argument, right? It's easy to be like, well, you did this. And the person's like, that was like 2 years ago. It's really easy to bring up the past, but it's helpful to stay present with the current argument at hand. And if there's a pattern, you can talk about that, but not throwing back in your partner's face old arguments, old conflicts, and really old resentments. The third tip is have rules of engagement. Okay, and you don't establish these when you're in conflict. Okay, let me say that again. You establish rules of engagement as a partnership when things are peaceful, connected, intimate, and sweet. So again, that also might be from past relationships. What will you not tolerate in conflict? Like for me, I will not tolerate yelling, name calling, or mocking. I also won't tolerate leaving the space physically, like storming out. I've had that in prior relationships. It was really harmful and hurtful. So for me, that is a hard no. So with my partner, we've had these conversations of what are hard no's. So what are your hard no's? Setting up your rules of engagement. It might be no yelling, no name calling. It might be you can leave the space, but only for an hour, whatever it is for the two of you, but figuring out your rules of engagement. And that will be different from couple to couple, but it's super important that you establish that during a connected time and that you both really try hard to stick to the rules of engagement. The fourth tip is take a time out. We give kids time out, for all you parents out there. Schools give kids time out. We as parents give kids time out, and yet we stop taking them as adults, and we need them just as much. And when you are in conflict with your partner, a timeout can be an incredible gift to yourself and the partnership. And so learning to ask for, speak to, and request a timeout And again, maybe part of your rules of engagement is you talk about maybe you don't leave the physical space, but maybe you can go to separate parts of the house or different rooms or go for a walk. But that person who asks for a timeout is also the one who's going to circle back and re-engage so that the other person doesn't feel left hanging, dangling, stranded, abandoned. So that's a really important thing. But learning timeouts can be so powerful. So learning to ask for your timeout when needed. The fifth tip is me sentences. So not you sentences, and that's so easy to do when you're triggered or angry or energized. You do this or you don't do this, but really sticking with me and I sentences, right? And that's really all you can do because you don't know what your partner's feeling. You are not a mind reader, even though we think we are sometimes. When we make assumptions, we are most likely going to be wrong, and we are definitely going to be assuming through our own lens and our own projection. So sticking with how you feel, your feelings, me, I, this makes me feel, I feel this way, is really powerful to not put your partner on the defensive. It is also much more true because you can really only speak to your feelings, your experience, your recollection of the event, and all of those things. So staying with feelings, and then also another strategy kind of along this line, this feeling thread is repeat back what your partner said, like just as accurately as you can hear it. So you could say something like, I heard you say, or what I heard you say is ... It's really powerful. The other person feels heard and validated, and it's a time to clarify any miscommunications or misunderstandings that can move you closer to connection rather than further apart in distance. The sixth tip is zoom out. And what I mean by that is try to take a few deep breaths, breathe into your belly. Breathing is so key for zooming out and for getting perspective, okay? And when we are in conflict, we often breathe more constricted, more shallow, more rapidly. So the best you can do to really slow your breath down, take a few breaths, make them audible, because actually there's cool research that your partner will mirror your breathing as you breathe better. And zooming out, so trying to get a different perspective, being curious about your partner's experience. And when I work with couples, I always say, like, if your partner is hurt, I want you to be curious that your partner is hurting or angry or sad or whatever it is. So being curious about your partner's experience, even if you don't understand it. You don't have to understand it, and you won't always understand it, but being curious about their experience. And it's really beautiful. Of course, you're curious about your partner's experience because you love this person. And so if you can kind of zoom out and be curious and not just be, I'm going to die on this ego hill of your own experience, but being curious about your partner's experience. The seventh tip, make a real apology. And this one I can get on a little bit of a soapbox about. It's really powerful, really important to me as my own person and when I work with couples and individuals as well. But how do you make a real apology? An apology that is not a platitude, a placating, an appeasement, an acquiescence, any of those things. An apology that is a deep felt, heartfelt apology. Right? So to me, apologizing means I see how this hurt you. I understand your feelings and experience, and I'm going to do my best to not hurt you in that way again. And you will hurt your partner in other ways, and you might even hurt them in the same way. But that awareness and understanding and offering a real heartfelt apology is so powerful to move the conflict towards and into resolution. And so some of the things that I just do not recommend that are opposite, that are platitudes instead of real apologies is, I'm sorry, but, right? So everything you're about to say after the but just negated what you said before in your partner's experience. And so really sticking with, I'm sorry, and why you're sorry, what you understand, and that you're going to do better not to do that again. If that's the case, if this is a hard boundary for you, then you can still make an apology for how the person is feeling and how that interaction has them feeling. So making a real apology. So not I'm sorry, but, or I'm sorry you feel this way, or I'm sorry, but you, and just sticking really with a true, heartfelt, amazing apology goes a massively long way in healing back to resolution. And the eighth and final tip for today is Aftercare. So Aftercare comes from the BDSM and the kink world. It's a way to help people transition out of their roles in the scene, in the role playing. It is also incredibly powerful for conflict resolution. So that might mean makeup sex. That might mean makeup cuddling. That might mean holding hands, doing some eye gazing, spending time together, going out on a date. It could even mean continuing to talk about, without rehashing the conflict, but talk about what you learned about each other, what felt intimate and special to learn about each other, but some sort of aftercare to help solidify and deepen the reconnection. And knowing that that allows for deeper intimacy than you had before the conflict. So the aftercare piece can be a super important, sweet thing. And aftercare will look different from couple to couple and even from conflict to conflict. So what do you want your aftercare to look like? And having conversations with your partner about that, again, when you're not in conflict, can be a super powerful way to fight fair. So your sexy homework for the week is to think about these things. Maybe you establish the rules of engagement. Maybe you establish the aftercare if you're not in conflict with your loved one. And if you are, or the next conflict that arises, remember these 8 tips and try 1 or 2 or 3 or all of them. I promise these will help you to learn to fight fair, have conscious conflict, to have conflict that moves you deeper into connection rather than further apart and into resentment building. And I want to share that I did not always fight fair, and I still don't always fight fair. This is a practice. This is a skill. I practice it just as long, right there along with all of you, but it's a really passion of mine to learn and practice to fight fair. Can you stay kind in conflict? And yes, the answer is yes, you can. I did not always fight fair. I used to raise my voice, stonewall, shut down, withhold, all the things that we can do in conflict. I am right there with you. I have done those things, and I am committed to learning to fight more consciously, to have conflict more consciously. And it is a practice. And I, in my marriage and in several partnerships that were not very healthy, I did not fight fair. I don't believe they did either, but I can only be responsible for my role. But I am in a very healthy partnership now, and we both work on fighting fair. So what I will tell you is that no matter where you are in your partnership, whether you have fought fair in the past, haven't fought at all, right? Couples will say that you don't fight, that we never have conflict. Well, I really welcome conflict into a partnership. It will help deepen your intimacy and understanding of the person. And you can do fighting really kindly, really consciously, really fairly, and really with love. So thank you for joining today. Thank you for listening. I would love to hear from you. Your thoughts on this, you can email me, stormy@lovedeeplab.com. We're on Instagram @lovedeep. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether this resonates for you, which tips were surprising to you, which tips do you rock it at, which tips do you struggle with. We'd just love to hear from you about this. It's a really deep passion of mine. So thank you for tuning in today, listening or watching, and thank you for being brave and opening your hearts to love deep.